So let me introduce myself first. My name is Dr. Bryce Smedley. I work for USAID, the Agency for International Development, currently based in the Democratic Republic of Congo as the Deputy Director of Education. Our annual portfolio in that country alone is around $29 million in basic education, youth development, and overall the agency in I believe it was last year, had reached somewhere around 24 million children globally, 50 different countries, trained over 300,000 government officials in the education sector, and provided thousands of opportunities for over 580 programs with institutes, higher institutes of education, universities, colleges, and those sorts of things. So USAID is one of the largest donors in the world for education, and especially in international development. My field is education, so why don't we take 30 seconds and introduce ourselves, and then I have some guiding questions, and then to have this more interactive, we'll answer a few questions, and then we'll turn it over for much more of a conversation with the audience to kind of contribute. So, go ahead.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Bryce. So, I'm Vaidishwaran from Chennai, India. I'm the founder of ViLearn. So, I'm a learning and development consultant, and I focus on instructional design, development, training, delivery, and I'm also into EdTech. So, that's one of the reasons why I'm really here, and I'm really passionate about educating people and educating kids, especially to make sure that our futures are secure.
And where are you from again?
I'm from Chennai in India.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jin. I came from Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. So I'm a bit different. I don't come from the education or learning industry. I came from a tech background. So I'm in tech for more than 15 years. I've done a lot of things. But during this pandemic, I saw that is an opportunity to improve education and learning ecosystem with the involvement of tech. So that's where I came in without any knowledge, but I'm working with the right people, to develop solution, all kind of so on. And currently, I'm the founder and CEO of Rescue EdTech. That now we are serving 500,000 students from 60 countries, providing effective online learning. So that's where I come from. Yeah.
Great. It's nice to have you both here with me. Just to start off with, when we think about the digital divide, the so-called digital divide refers to the gap between those who have access to technology and those who do not. Nearly half of the world's population do not have access to that technology, as found by the United Nations in 2021. One of the challenges globally in education is that we have over 75 million children, school-age children, who lack education opportunities. In some countries in the world, there are generations that have never walked into a school. Some countries, there's an absence of even the most basic forms of education material, like a book. So the idea of a tablet or a phone may even be a dream for many. So there is a digital divide that exists in this world. It's not necessarily confined towards developing countries, but in all nations, including developed nations, including my country, the United States, where impoverished neighborhoods don't necessarily have access in the classroom to some of these technologies. So just to start us off, for both of you, one guiding question is, in your opinion, and maybe from the perspective of your countries, what is the risk to our countries, our society, our global community, if we do not address the digital divide? And what is the impact that will have on our communities, our regions, and the places that we work and live?
Yeah, so one of the things is digital divide, like you said, is something that's very real, and it is happening across the globe. And one of the things that I find that if we are if we really have to move towards closing the digital divide, because we now live in a global village, and information is being exchanged online, and we really are able to communicate with each other and learn from each other. That's essentially the key. act of learning from each other is so important that if we miss the train, we're missing out on so many important things. And from my country's perspective, actually, one of the things that really works in our favor is when it comes to the cost of internet. My country is one of the lowest costing country. I mean, the cost of internet is very, very low. I think from my country's perspective, it's more towards gaining access to the devices and really making sense of what is there and how to use it.
On my opinion, I think education and learning now serving a new generation of people. Example, we are not serving the older generation and how they brought up from. Can you imagine children as young as 1, 2 years old? They touch the phone before they touch any books. They are more familiar with all the gadgets, then they know how to open and read the books. Example, my daughter, he know how to unlock my phone, the password, he know where to go to YouTube. But when you pass a book to her, it's not there. So while we are doing this, I always talk about, it's not ready, it's not 100% ready, but we are preparing for the new generation that their habit, their attention span, and whatever the interests on are coming from a new brought up from what we are last time. So there's a lot of solution we are going through, and I always say we do not have one thing to suit all ages. I still believe the younger generation should go to school, to have the physical connection, learn and touch and feel things because they haven't. And whoever that can succeed in digital learning need to have self-discipline because we cannot control each other. I cannot see you. I cannot monitor you. There's self-discipline, the minimum requirement need to be successful and impactful. So this is where I believe, and we always prepare for the upcoming more and more things. I know infrastructure is not ready, but 10 years later, things are different. So we better prepare now than you prepare 10 years later. All right, this is what I have to say.
One of the things, I think you just touched upon it. Obviously, many children who are born since 2000, maybe could be referred to as digital natives. They were born with technology. They have access to technology in some parts of the world. One of the struggles, I think, in the classrooms is when a child has much more of a command over the technology in the classroom than the teacher, who, like myself, I didn't get an email until I was in college. And I didn't understand how to use it until I was in college. For a lot of countries in the world, the teaching staff are over 40 or 50 or even in their 60s. What do you do in your own realms to support teachers or parents to better understand the technology? Because the worst thing that can happen is when a child or learner sees a teacher that doesn't understand technology, the student then by nature devalues that person, saying, well, wait, if you don't understand this platform, then can you really teach me? So how do you support the teacher in that classroom and the parent or the community to really bring up the schools across the board? Or have you found challenges doing that? Over.
Absolutely. It's a great question there because, like you said, one of the things is the availability of technology. That's there. But what we are really lacking is the awareness of what is there for what. And number two is how exactly should you use it in a way that's meaningful and that actually transfers the value to the learners. And especially from a teacher's perspective, I think that's one of the things that I've been personally working on over the period of the pandemic, where I've been upskilling teachers and trainers on how to adopt digital tools. And just to let you know, the oldest learner in my session was 78 years old. So he was a retired teacher and he still wants to go out there and make an impact and connect with people. I think what really matters over here is your ability to present the value of adopting digital technology and how it's really going to impact and empower our learners. I think once you demonstrate that value, I think the level of acceptance goes high. But yes, when they start learning, there will be some roadblocks, but it's just a matter of patience, it's a matter of time. And as long as you keep that passion and that interest to learn alive, I think anything is possible.
Okay, I want to use real case example to share this question. I think I have a live online learning platform that I have a lot of analytics to share. I agree. Today is not about transforming. Yeah, learners is there. I think it's a triangle between learners, teachers, and the government body. The second thing we need to solve now is the teachers. In our platform, having teachers to teach online is not normal. It's not a norm for them. Before they came to our platform, that every day we are doing live classes, serving more than 3,000 students coming every minute, right? So we even give them orientation. We also tell them how to do, what to do. This is not to do. This is what. But they have been teaching for 10 years, 20 years. They still need to go through this. I think when we conducted our research, we analyzed from our online classes. We have done more than 1,000 classes. These are things like what you say. It's not only the ecosystem. It's not only the infrastructure. It's not only the learners. I think as the teachers for ourselves, we need to, do this momentum shift as well. Teaching physically and teaching online is two different things.
Absolutely.
The skill set and different
Yeah,
things. Yes.
the approach itself is so different.
Yes. Can you imagine we do also coaches orientation?
Yeah.
Teachers orientation. I say, I'm not the best to teach you, but I will tell you how do you teach in online environment successfully and really driving the impact to the learners.
Yeah, I think just to add to whatever you said, I think now that we are in a new normal today, I think we no longer are really in the system where I teach, you learn.
Yes.
We learn together, and the whole learning process itself, I think one of the things that the digital world has really accelerated today is that the learning process is moving towards becoming implicit.
Yes.
So when you make this whole learning exercise implicit, to answer, to just expand on your question, and when you show that this process works, your teachers will automatically want to adopt and really work towards and partner to bridge the digital divide.
Great. Another question I wanted to ask both of you coming from the industry is for communities and schools that are resource poor, meaning they don't have access to funding new technology or those sorts of things, what investment is needed by the ed tech industry to really be equitable outside of the places you're currently working? For instance, if we're looking at kind of a global community, and even within our own countries, schools that just don't have access to it, that impact of them not being able to plug in and to learn, where does industry sit, in terms of investing in those communities and providing more opportunities for those communities? Do you have opinions you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at from an industry perspective, one of the misconceptions is that when you see that there is a community that doesn't have access to tools or that doesn't have access to internet, you give them internet or you give the tools, you think the problem is solved. That isn't really the case, because there are certain parts of the world where internet just can't reach, or at least we're not yet there. So how do you empower such communities? I think the key is to really strike a balance between what the level of technology that can be incorporated and how you mix the human component to it and make our learners really move towards becoming content creators themselves and learn from each other's experience. And I think today morning we had a couple of great talks where we were talking about how we can actually, that's actually one of the messages I got, is we can create a community of learning, how we learn from each other. And industry can bring in those expertise or those additional valuable information at strategic intervals to make sure that the learning journey continues.
Yeah, on my thought, I think doing this online for all the education and learning, the minimum requirement for investment will be the gadgets, as simple as a simple phone or a simple laptop. I know there's still not internet in some places, but I think I believe will be improved, because I believe satellite internet will solve a lot of things. Yes, I think we are progressing. How does people, those school users have to start the step one? A lot of people are still thinking whether yes or no. Please start the step one. As long as your whole school got 500 people, as long as you have one laptop, one phone, they can experience, they can see, or you just do something. You still teach physically, but try to show them, try to connect them to a place that they see, oh, this is internet, this is connecting to the whole world, right? Yeah.
Actually, when I was doing my research on reaching out to certain community, because I partner with a few NGOs to work with tribal villages, I actually stumbled upon something called Project Rachel. I'm sure you would have heard about it. So it's something where a router, like device is given, it's preloaded with versions of websites and some basic content, but it also has the ability for the local teachers to look at that, get inspired, create content, and also make your learners create content and add to that library. And then they have discussions around it. And I think that's a very powerful way in which you can use technology as a stepping stone into making your learning process that much more powerful.
Okay, one more follow-up question, and then I'll turn it over to everyone to ask questions. You know, when we think of the digital divide, we can also look at what that looks like in a classroom in itself that may have technology. And when we look at students with varying abilities or students who may have disabilities, what kind of assistive educative technology do you have that really allows every learner in the classroom environment to learn? Whether they're hearing impaired, sight impaired, have mobility issues, what are the different technologies you see out there that really allows each member in the classroom community to access the technology and to engage? Do any of you have experience with that sorts of technology?
Okay, I'll probably let him take the technology part, so I will probably address the design part. Okay. So, see, when you look at accessibility, I think there are a lot of countries like the US which has gone a long way in ensuring accessibility, like 503 compatibility and all of those things. But I think a lot of countries are still lagging behind in terms of awareness and sensitization to the needs of those learners. And I think it's important that we start by sensitizing people and sit together and think of creative ways and creative design strategies that we can incorporate and use technology as a support to really make it a reality for the learners.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Just to follow up before we hand it over, is that one of the great things of in-person learning is when you have students of different abilities, that in-person learning together allows empathy and solidarity and feelings for other students who may be different based on whatever it might be. And when you move into kind of a technology-based learning, how does that also support those critical connections between learners to build kind of solidarity and friendship amongst them? I mean, it's a challenge, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely, because one of the things that is growing today is the concept of social learning. So there are a lot of platforms that are available today where people can post and interact with their learners, with their peers, with their cohorts within their own class. And there are a lot of platforms that also offer this safe space where people can post anonymously and get their questions or any concerns that they have really addressed by the teacher. And I think, when you go, it's really not a direct substitute to human-to-human interaction like what we're having right now. I missed this for the past 2 years. So, if you really think about it, technology is really making strides, and there is a lot of AI incorporation is also happening in that area where we are having bots that are really making big strides in making communications as human, as close to being human as possible. And I think we are going in the right direction as far as that is concerned. So I think that is, if it is going to be digital, I think this is the right direction that we're going. And I'll hand it over to him for answering the nitty-gritties of the technology part.
Yeah, I think I want to anchor on this. I think there's only one word. Technology will definitely help disability learning with a lot of advanced tools, a lot of new creation that coming out. There's only one way street, improving and getting better. Example, I want to talk on few, like currently our platform are serving the deaf community because they cannot listen, but they can watch sign language. How do we connect the deaf trainers or teachers to around the deaf community? Currently we're also working with blind association. Blind cannot see, but they can hear. There's a kind of software that can transcript the voice into something they can, learn from touching. I think if you have disability or leg, hands, there's some tools helping you to move around, let you experience, how you have hands and leg, to do the things that first time. I think AR, VR also will come in to enhance, things that you cannot do, but in your imagination, human behavior is like that. If I never touch or I never experience, I never see before, I do not know. If I have the chance to have touch, see, or imagine in front of me, I think that's some kind of learning. So whatever we see now towards that, people are talking about, metaverse, this kind of thing. Some of you are very, objection. But let's think about the good thing that it will bring, to enhance everyone. Because I always say the new generation born up from this, they are the one that's so easy to adapt into this. Not us, but they. I think it's a good sign. So it's a lot of hard work. It's between different parties to bring this forward. Yeah.
I think until then, until we reach that space, I think right now the way I see things is blended learning is really the key to keep things moving at the moment, because we are all coming out of a pandemic, and it's difficult for all of us, because you were talking about the triangle of the teacher, the student, and the government.
Yes.
I would like to add one more side to it and make it a square, which is the parents.
Okay, right.
Because
right.
when you consider parents, I mean, they play a very important role in this equation, because they have a major influence on the learners, because school takes only so much amount of time, and especially in today's world when things are digital. You're out of the school the moment you switch off your Zoom or whatever, Google Classroom or whatever you're using, and after that it's your parents. And how they perceive digital education, how they look at what you're doing, and what is their prior experience to the digital arena, and how their perspectives must also evolve to really accept this. And I think until we reach that stage of maturity, I think we're still not there, is we need to have this blended learning, because not only for that, I think the human connect has tremendous value. So I teach a lot of edtech, but I still believe in the power of the human touch. So I think blended learning is really the way forward in terms of keeping our learners engaged and take us along the journey to close the digital divide.
Great, thanks. In the region that I work in Congo, we often are dealing with schools that are closed due to ongoing conflicts. COVID, of course, was a big shock where schools were closed over the year. And some of the technologies that you find in those schools would be interactive audio instructions. So, solar paneled radios where you create content on USB flash drives. You put it in, you provide that to each classroom teacher, and there you have a flash drive that provides literacy lessons, reading lessons, or it could be a flash drive lessons for the teacher. How to deal with stress, how to do classroom management, group work. And so a lot of places in the world where education is at risk of being closed down, whether conflict, disease, we must look at different ways to bring technology to students. Sometimes when the schools are closed, actually, you transfer over to something called interactive radio instruction, where they can continue learning at home when schools are open. Then you do IAI, interactive audio instruction. When we think about places like, well, today, unfortunately, Ukraine, you have an education system that's now shut down. In other parts of the world, students are sitting out of school. And so you think about how technology could play a role in keeping them learning as these conflicts or emergencies continue. And I think that's a part of this discussion that gets very little attention, but that's when people really do need that technology to continue their education.
My thought is when we talk about education with technology, we have to put politics aside. But if you involve any politics, no matter what we do, it's not possible. Government can just block you, shut you, do anything. No matter what you have, it can be disconnected in just one button. So I think
and there's the power of the VPN.
Yes. Let's sell VPN, right?
Well, I mean, the act of education is political in nature.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
But the point being was just that technology is so dynamic that learners and families will access it if there's a place to access it.
I think you brought in a very good point, and this is where I think we need to leverage the power of our communities, because we I mean, it's only situations like this, like a pandemic or a war, that really makes us sit back and really question, okay, is there something that I can do? Rather than accepting what's being thrown at us, we should go about and challenge, okay, so I'm here. Because my personal belief is that every problem has a solution. If there's no solution, it's a fact. We'll have to work around it. So this is a problem, and there is a solution. And the solution is really banking on our communities. And if as long as we as individuals, we are able to influence our sphere of influence, the world can take care of itself.
Well, and I know today there's a lot of MOOCs, massive open online courses.
Absolutely.
That allows learners to plug in and to continue to build their skill development. And then there's also certificates. So I agree with the statement made earlier that technology is the future. It comes in different packages and it serves different needs during the context. So how about on that note, we open it up to the floor to see if there's any questions or statements or anything that can continue the conversation. Would anyone like to add to the conversation? Well, at any time, raise your hand. Oh, we got a
hand.
Testing. Okay. This is for all three, so feel free to take it away. But I've heard a lot about blended learning. And for those of us that are coming from other word usage, I mean, there's been so many other ways to frame how to learn and different learning platforms and different approaches to learning, practice-based, experimental, all that jazz. But for those where blended learning may be a new terminology, how would you suggest our approach to starting to have a blending learning environment? What would that look like for us to actively start practicing that for our students?
Okay, so great question there. So I think when it comes to blended learning, really the first step is to really identify what exactly are the expectations that you set for your learners, what are exactly the objectives that you want, and what are the actions that you want your learners to perform to reach those objectives, and then you identify which modality is going to help you best address those points so that they are able to perform those actions that address those objectives. So when it comes to the choice of modality, be it online, so let's say that I have a program and I want to say 20% of this is going to be asynchronous. It's going to be online, it's going to be self-paced, and I'm going to have a percentage of this which is going to be synchronous, where I come online and I do a live kind of an event. And then there's, let's say if it's a science lesson and there's a lab component to it, and people come in person and do particular things. So it really depends on what exactly are the actions that you want your learners to perform to achieve their objectives. And I think that's one of the key factors that's going to determine what is going to go into that blend.
Yeah, it's a combination of both, yeah. It's interesting though with technology, when we look at critical literacy, a lot of research says that if you want to reach children or learners to learn how to read and write, you must find and understand their literacy practices at home.
Absolutely.
And then bridge it to the classroom. And so if we know that a younger generation that we termed earlier are digital natives, then these platforms that they're spending their leisure time on, do we have the technology that bridges that as a literacy practice to the classroom? And if you don't have that bridge, then what's going to happen to the student? They're going to be disengaged. And so
that's a great point you brought in, because there are a lot of technologies that we take for granted today that can be so beautifully repurposed for education. So, I mean, starting with something as simple as a WhatsApp to whatever software that, I mean, we use a lot of tools and technologies today for various other things. But if you can really sit, think, and introspect about it and see how you can repurpose that for education. So the advantage you have is the technology part is already sold for you. Yeah. So when you repurpose it and give it a new dimension, the acceptability will be much better.
And WhatsApp's a great example in most parts of the world, especially with learners learning a language. They will create WhatsApp groups.
Exactly.
To practice their English or to practice their Chinese or to practice whatever language, and they'll use that as a learning tool amongst peers.
Yeah, in fact, for one of my clients, their learner base was actually located in the eastern part of India, where 3G network is a luxury over there. So for them, what we did was we converted that curriculum into a set of flashcards, and we created a chatbot which will function within WhatsApp, which is going to push that information to them, and also have these groups where people get to interact and socialize and sort of exchange notes. And this was for a sales team. So I think that really worked for us.
I've also seen that technology in schools where either through WhatsApp or through SMS, the school can notify the parent of homework or assignments. And so, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, as I say just now, I still go back to my statement that I say it's a triangle, you say it's a square. I think, as you say, not only students, teachers itself, coaches need to relearn, recraft the way you teach, the way you deliver content in online. Based on this question, I thought of a new business opportunity, man. We talk about students, we talk about content. Why don't one talk about teachers? We should have a way, a method. It's a business, to reskill, to retrain, and then upskill the teachers as well. I think this is one of very big lack of, because I noticed this. A lot of great teachers spend 15 years. When you bring them online, they are like stunned.
Yep, that's so true, so true.
Yes, sir. And the younger generation is not ready to start up as an experienced teacher. I think this is a new space. Let's work together. I think you can start a new business from there. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
Any other question? Yes.
Yeah, so I think I had this conversation with Jin on the first day, and there was a keynote where Dr. Deena was here, and she talked about the inspiration to relearn teaching online, and at that age she had that inspiration to upskill herself. I would just like to add to the point that that Jin mentioned, that we need to talk a little bit more about how we can help teachers kind of catch up to this trend. Because you're not just making them better teachers, you're kind of making them think like entrepreneurs as well. Because now you're not just limited to your school kids or the people that you're teaching. You can literally go online, go to a platform and teach everyone who can be of a relevant audience to you. So for example, someone who's teaching math for standards 9th and 10th in India, if he's a good teacher and if people like him, because there are always those good teachers in schools, right? Every student loves them, but they've 9th and 10th in India. If he's a good teacher and if people like, because there are always those good teachers in schools, right? Every student loves them, but they've 9th and 10th.
Thanks for the repetition.
If he's entrepreneurs, that's going to help in a major way to kind of bridge that digital divide. Because, for example, Coursera, as an example, we have professors in Harvard and Yale who have courses there, and we can access it from anywhere in the world. So if we maybe do it live, and if we maybe do it for all sectors of education, not just for business school or not just for college students, I think that can legitimately be an idea for EdTech.
So that's a great point, and I fully agree with that. So I was talking about spheres of influence, and I'm already doing that in my little sphere of influence, where I identify teachers, I identify students, and they can be from anywhere. They just have to know me. And I teach EdTech and how to properly use EdTech, and it's pandemic, things are bad, so I'm doing it just for free. Whenever I find time, at least 2 workshops or 3 workshops a month, I managed to get them on a Sunday morning where there is nights and relaxed. Just call them. We do a little bit of, I do a little bit demonstration of a tool of choice. I'm not just teaching the tool, I also teach them what are the instructional design principles that need to go behind to make this tool to be utilized effectively, both from a teacher's perspective as well as from a learner's perspective. And then it's Q&A like this. So we have a lot of fun. And this is something that I'm doing in my little sphere of influence. So you're all welcome to join that sphere as well. And like you were saying, that can actually eventually scale up to become a company in itself. And that's a great business idea as well.
We should start that together, man. All right.
Absolutely.
So I think I'll give you my last input. I think content is not an issue. The world has so much content. We have enough quality, so on and so on. I think the tools, the technology, the software, leave it to the expert. The infrastructure, you can't do anything. Leave it to the big boys. I think for us, how we should focus is how do we teach effectively through online? As a teachers, as a trainers or coaches, that is the one focus we need to do only. So it's like the others, leave it to the others to focus. Everyone is doing something. So as a knowledge transfer, teachers like us, we just have to focus that.
I think one of the things that I would like to add to what you said, and I think this is one of the core purposes of conferences like this is we have all the players that you mentioned over here, and I think it's just a matter of all of us to come together, connect, and come up with really creative solutions that can really take the learning of our community forward.
I definitely love this conference because I connected to a lot of people that we are doing things on our own, but because of this, we start talking, to enhance the whole ecosystem.
It is a good platform to share your...
And I'll just end on saying that, as a community of educators, we do have a responsibility to bridge the digital divide, not just with classrooms that have stable electricity and forms of technology, but a large part of the world doesn't have any of this. And they're left out. And that's human potential that can solve tomorrow's problems. And if we don't keep them as how do we reach them at our core, then we're cutting off kind of one hand. And so thank you very much for your contributions today. It's very exciting. It was very nice to share this panel with you in this space, and thanks for listening.
Yes. Thank you
I
very
have
much.
a question.
Thank you, everyone.
Quick
Just
one. Yes.
It's not really a question, it's a problem.
I love problems, please.
This digital divide, it's really alive in certain economic sections of society. And so in my schools, when the pandemic hit, I had to none of my children had phones, so I had to really do aggressive fundraising drive to give each child a phone, and we managed to give 1,800 phones to all our children. Now that the schools have become physical, I'm getting continuous complaints from the parents that they never had the problem, and now the children have got addicted. So how do you solve that problem? Because it is a real problem, because many a times they are refusing to come to a physical school because they're just sitting at home and playing with their phones. A problem that the privileged children had years ago has now got transferred to the underprivileged. So what do we do about it?
Okay, very good. This will never go off, no matter how much generation upcoming.
Yeah.
I think it's how
Let me know when you find out, please. I
Yeah.
would love to know that solution.
I think it's about complementing each other. I think if you have faced this situation, I think it's a good situation, but because other countries still don't have the 1008 phone, you have already 1008 phone, that's a good thing,
Yeah.
This is my wild imagination. Children will still go to the physical school, but they learn through their tablet or phone just in front of the teachers because they connect, so well to this gadget. If you ask them to answer questions to here compared to the whiteboard or to the book, I tell you they answer from here very fast. That day I met a teacher that she give exam through Instagram Reels. What? Instagram Reels, Instagram Reels is a story, right? They answer much more faster, effective, and learn more well through that. So I always think that, it's a crazy world. I cannot imagine, but it's the way going. We still meet each other, but we still just learn through that things. It will be replacing the books, the whatever.
As a learning designer, the way I look at it is, what is there in that which is making them distracted, and how I can use that to deliver my learning. That's how I would think about it, and probably work with you guys to come up with some solutions where we can actually make learning addictive.
Yeah, well, I have a point on that, and I'm thinking that why they are addicted to technology may be because the human connection is missing. Maybe because a lot of us are spending long hours working, and we are giving our child that gadget saying depend on that, and we are not taking time on saying, yes, kids have time, they want to have fun, they want to enjoy. So if we increase human connection, that dependency will go less and less. Because every human being, that's what they want, is basically connect. They're connecting to a gadget. If you take that connection somewhere else, which is meaningful, more powerful, then the addiction.
Forever, it will not change. So that is what I thought. I think, like what you say, a WhatsApp group, we should create a very big WhatsApp group. Whoever have issue, right, all the
Yeah.
whole world will come in and give suggestions. That's what I suggest.
Okay, last
So
one.
I just have a comment here. It's not about like, I don't have solution for this, but I have a lot of concerns. My problem is, we have been giving kids as small as like the ones who cannot even speak, phones. And we're calling about digital education currently. In pandemic, it was really needed. Talking about addiction. And addiction is real. And digital addiction is real. Whether you have human, you don't have human, doesn't really matter. What we have not yet understood is how these devices are changing our patterns. How are they creating more problems in terms of, socially, how are they creating problems? A lot of other things. While there's amazing things in terms of, how the reach online has increased, digital literacy that way, you can reach more people and things like that. There's a lot of other problems, bullying, anonymity, a lot of other sort of issues. I think there's no right or wrong answer here, but what we really need to see is not just technology as a means of connection or technology as way of effectively giving education, but something in terms of design, as to how you design that it does not become addiction in the first place. Anything addiction is bad. First, let's start from there. So let's not create any addiction for anybody. But how do you design so they are plugged for those particular sessions or whatever the activity is, and then disconnect.
Are you able to hear me?
The word is disconnect.
I think that is where I completed that triangle into a square. I think the fourth side comes in there because
It's not parents also. I think it is much to do about design. This.
no, there is see design is always there, and see when we look at design, I think you will be able to answer more about that. Is see we design in such a way that our learners are engaged, because only when a learner is fully engaged with whatever we do, I'm talking from an education perspective, is they engage fully, they are fully concentrated, they are fully invested in it, and they get the maximum out of it. The same design is being used for other purposes as well, which turns into an addiction.
That's a very different sort of approach you are talking about. Let's talk about Facebook or WhatsApp or any of these apps. These apps were designed to spend most of your time. And that's why the behavior that is used is actually, like if you read a book called Hooked, you will understand. So there are definitely...
Niray's Ayal's book, it's a beautiful book.
Right? Tribe pattern is used to create society. B, it is used as hunting pattern, where indefinite, scrolls are there. And that's why you keep scrolling, right? Those are addictive pattern. Those are design patterns created for you to get hooked to those particular devices. So I'm just saying nothing is bad or good. What I'm trying to say is by design, we should make sure that it is not contributing for addiction. The metrics of, creating these kind of applications like Facebook have faced a lot of problems because of the same design principles that is used, which is making it...
I think I agree with you there. I think when we create engagement is important, investment is important, but at the same time, balance is also important. I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That was very insightful. Thank you for sharing.